What's up, y'all? So today is May 5th, 2024. Back at y'all with another video. Happy Cinco de Mayo to those of y'all who celebrate that. So I did say that I was going to try to be more consistent with making videos. So there is something that I want to talk about. Today is Sunday, so I figure I want to talk about something a little bit more religious today. And one of those things I was kind of thinking about, I was kind of thinking about this yesterday, is should Christians wait until you're married before having sex? Okay. Now, me personally, I do believe that, as a Christian, I do believe you should wait until you're married to have sex. I do believe that. But there's a problem, right? I believe there's an elephant in a room that many Christians, many people just don't seem to mention in reality. And that reality is, the time at when people are expected to get married, or the age that people recommend you to get married is much, much later than the age when you actually start to develop sexual desires or sexual interests, right? Which is usually as a teenager, right? Usually around puberty, or those teenage years when your hormones start changing. But you're not expected to get married around that age, right? Many times you're not expected to get married till you hit your these days your mid-20s, mid to late 20s. You even hear people say 21, 22 is too young to get married for some people. I don't necessarily think so. But the thing is, I think that the struggle is, for some Christians is you shouldn't have sex until you're married. But the issue is you have to hold back, or sort of, I guess, deprive yourself, or not deprive. What's the word I'm looking for? Restraint, sexual restraint. You have to hold a lot of restraint for close to 10 to 15 years after you've already started developing these sexual desires, and you're expected to hold off on them for like close to 10 to 15 years. And to me, that's a little bit unrealistic. I think the reality is, what some people don't talk about is people are getting married at a much, much later age than they did back in the old days. There was a time when it wasn't too abnormal to be married at 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. A lot of your great grandparents were teenagers, or just or in their early 20s when first getting married. In fact, I think there was a term that they used called spinster. A spinster was a woman who was over the age of 20 and still unmarried. That was considered a spinster, because it was unusual to go that long, or to be that age and still not be married. So the times have changed. So it's almost like um, people, I don't want to say maturing slower, but it's almost like we're delaying adulthood later and later and later. But biologically, you're the same. Biologically, uh, puberty is the same age as it's pretty much always been. You know, Probably since the beginning of humanity. So I think that's the real issue. That's what's kind of not. That's where the real disconnect is. It's like you have your biological clock that says this, and then you have society and religion that says this, but they don't meet. They don't connect. They don't match with the same timing. So I think that's the. So I guess the real question is, what age is a good age to get married? Now, a lot of people would say, well, 24, 25, 26, right? But that's almost 10 years past the age when you start to actually develop, or start developing, or start puberty, or start to develop sexual desires and stuff. So now your chances of you know committing fornication or having sex out of wedlock is much higher. Especially when you're young. Because you're not as experienced when it comes to controlling your emotions and so forth like that. So I think that that's a big elephant in a room, especially in the church, is what is an appropriate age to get married. Now, these days people say, well, you should get your education first. You want to get your college degree or get whatever career you want to get started, but that's not going to slow down your sexual urges. You know, it doesn't. I think that people have this idea that being married stops you from doing something else. Like, in my personal opinion, you can get married and still pursue a career, in sort of a way. You know, um, I think that there's a lot of societal issues as well. These days women are working more, starting careers, going to school more, and this sort of interrupts with the biological duties or the natural duties. Um, if a woman wants to have children, um, if a woman wants to have children, having a career or pursuing a career might slow down the progress, or it'll take longer to reach that point of getting married and having children. So it should be older. So, mothers are getting older now. You got older mothers now. So um, it's a real complex subject. I think because one thing I noticed about the church is the church has sort of a sex problem. Sex seems to be a real issue in the church. People have a real problem talking about it. Like, sex is real demonized in a way, and so I think it's causing a lot of problems because I think that we haven't really they're being a little bit dishonest about um, the reality of being celibate. Celibacy is not for everybody. Some people are higher natured than others. Some people have a stronger sex drive than others. So if you expect a person to go an extended period of time without having sex until they get married, um, it's going to be very difficult for them. It can be very difficult for some people because it ties into your very human nature. So, in my personal opinion, um, if you're going to expect somebody to refrain from having sex until they're married, I think that you may have to encourage marriage at an earlier age. Now, that's controversial as well. Because, like I said before, some people feel like, well, you should get an education first. You should, get your career started, get some life experience, and all those things are understandable. But it's one of those things is very it's very complex. It's very complex issue. Um, I'm trying to think here, like. Um, Most people who I know who are married, right? Like, I'm a millennial. Most people that I know who are married to this day are married to people who they went to high school with. So, most likely, I'm not gonna say all, but many people who I know met their spouse, the person who they eventually married, in high school as teenagers. So, maybe getting married at a young age is not as bad as some people may perceive it as. Um, I think that the longer you go without being married, the higher chance you are to be a single mother or be a single father, the higher chance you're going to commit fornication, sex out of wedlock. It's kind of it's almost like a setup, almost, right? It's like you're not supposed to have sex until you're married, but you're not expected to you're expected to wait an extended period of time before you're married, and you don't even know how long that's going to be. You see what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying? It's almost like you're being set up. That's why I think sex is such an issue in the church. Some of the worst or some of the most fornication and sexual deviant behavior goes on in the church. I think because of that. I think you're not really, like, if you're going to say, here's my solution. If you're a Christian, if you say that, and I'm talking about mostly, especially if you're parents, right? Parents raising children. If you expect your kids to not have sex or refrain from sex until they're married, you need to also have something in place that will help them reach that goal successfully. That will help them do that successfully. Put something in place that will help them, or not just restraint by itself, but find them a spouse, someone who they can marry. I was talking about something not too long ago. I don't know if I want to talk about it in this video too much, but some countries, they used to practice they practice arranged marriage. They actually used to practice that even here in America at one point. Some families still kind of do, where the parents will go out and find a husband or wife for their child, especially once they reach a certain age, which is usually between 17, 18, 19, maybe even 20. They go out and find somebody for them to marry, because it, in their minds, it's not really good to stay single for a long time like that. And once again, it's the whole sexual desire thing. You want to prevent having babies out of wedlock. So I think that's my solution in a way. Maybe not necessarily practice arranged marriage necessarily, but more like, it's okay, as a Christian parent, you expect your children to restrain from sex until they are, or refrain from sex until they are married, right? But then just kind of send them out there and tell them, just go find your own husband or find your own wife, or not have something in place to help them make that happen. I do believe with the right kind of planning, with the right kind of system in place, I do believe you can actually get married at a young age. I'm talking about, when I say young, I'm talking about like 18, 19, 20 years old, and still complete your education. You don't have to have a child immediately after getting married. People want to go out and party and stuff like that, but really the partying and drinking, all that really adds up is more sex partners, more more getting drunk and increasing your chances. Hold on, let me pause this for a second. Stop. Hold on. Yeah, I noticed a lot of lag in my phone. I think it's because it's kind of getting hot, so I'm not sure how well it's showing. I don't know if the audio and the picture is synced up, but hopefully it is. But anyway, I do believe that it is possible to be married at a young age and still get an education and still live your life a little bit. But I think that a lot of it comes down to planning. I think that a lot of churches, a lot of Christian folks tell you don't have sex until you're married, but then just kind of throw you out there to the wolves and don't really have a plan in place. The older I get, the more I realize how much planning is, how important planning is. You have to plan your career. You have to plan your education. You have to plan your marriages. You got to have a plan in place, and you need to start planning stuff. I say at least by the age, by the time you're about 16. No later than 16. By the time you're 16, that's the age where you really need to figure out what you're going to do. And if you're being raised in a Christian household who teaches, come down, you know how the church is. They come down really hard about sex. In fact, sex is, like I said before, it's a real issue. It's like people, it's almost like they're afraid of it in church. And I think most of the time it's because it's something that they're struggling, that they are struggling with in reality. And but I think a lot of it comes down to planning. I think you need to start maybe as a parent, start looking for a potential husband or potential wife for your child. No, not while they're still a child, but I mean start looking. Maybe 16 years old, 17 years old, you go out and you start looking for someone who could be a potential husband or potential wife at that age for them, to help sort of fast track. Because most of the time, um, they're going to wind up dating. These days, people date longer than they're married, right? People will date, be boyfriend and girlfriend for like 10 years, but be married for like 3 years, right? They'll be boyfriend and girlfriend for 10 years, then by the time they finally get married, 3 years later, they're divorced. So it's like they were boyfriend and girlfriend longer than married. And I think a lot of that's because they, it's almost like they developed I don't know. I don't want to get too much into that. But I notice people date longer than they are married. Let me get a drink of water. Hold on a second. I had to start over again. So I guess that's all I want to say for this video. I guess y'all can leave your comments, like and subscribe. Um, Leave a comment because I want to know what other people think about this subject. What do you think of my perspective about the whole time that you're expected to get married versus the time when you actually start to really develop those sexual desires? You see, so is it a mismatch? Like, are you sort of being set up to fornicate? Are you being set up for that in a way? Being told not to have sex until you're married, but on the other hand, saying you can't get married until you're at least this age or this age, which tends to be far past the time, which tends to be an extended period of time. Is that a setup? You see what I'm saying? So, and what do you think about my idea of the whole system to help fast track to get your children married at a younger age? Do you think it's possible to be married and still get a education or get a career in place? Because like I said, I don't think you have to have children right away. I think you can wait some years before you actually decide to have children. So I don't know. You guys let me know what y'all think about that. All right.